Hey, welcome to this session, Reading Others, Yourself for Better Social Engagement. And the idea is developing your emotional intelligence, which is a huge issue in today's culture. My name is Glenn Herschberger, and I'm the Executive Director for Church Planting for Converge Great Lakes, and it's my honor to present to you today. Emotional intelligence is extremely important skill to have for personal and professional success. That's Ken Blanchard. And it's so important to be able to be socially aware, to read the room, and to read yourself. And that's what we're going to cover this morning or today. So Daniel Goleman, he defines emotional intelligence as a person ability to manage his feelings so that those feelings are expressed appropriately and effectively. And I love what the Bible has to say. In Proverbs 29:11 says, "A fool gives full vent to his spirit, but a wise man quietly holds back." And so as I was doing this research, I came across this organization called Genos International, and they have surveyed US globally, and this is what they came up with for an emotionally intelligent definition. Making intelligent responses to negative emotions in order to generate positive emotions in yourself and others through being present, empathetic, genuine, resilient, and empowering in our behavior as often as possible. In my own journey with emotional intelligence, I don't know if you've ever had this where you've regretted saying something or someone misread you with your attitude or even your facial expression. Well, that's emotional intelligence. And so the truth of the matter is that you and I need to manage people. And because of that, people have emotions. They have different emotions that they bring with them in any circumstance. And many times, we have to be reminded that it's more important for our social awareness, our emotional intelligence. People need to know that probably more than we need to rattle off books of the Bible. Few people really care about what you know. Obviously, you've heard this until they know how much you care, and that relates to emotional intelligence. At the end of the day, people reading correctly and managing your emotional interactions with them will get you much farther in ministry, in the corporate world, and even in relationships within your family and friends and others. So you talk about the importance of emotional intelligence. Well, Jack Welch, the former CEO of General Electric, he said this. He said, "No doubt emotional intelligence is more than just book smarts, but my experience," he says, "is an actual more important than making of a leader. You just can't ignore it." That's what he says. So there's a PhD, Mark Brackett, founder of and director of Yale Center of Emotional Intelligence. He wrote this book called Permission to Feel. He said, through the pandemic and what we're experiencing today, the major emotion that people have, especially in the US, is anxiety. And many people around the world are stressed as a result of what we've just come through the last 3 years. Most of the people, America, the US scores very high. And then it filters down to the UK, Canada, France, Australia, and New Zealand. Well, a Yale survey of more than 5,000 people globally conducted early in the pandemic says 95% of participants used words like anxious, fearful, worried, overwhelmed to describe how they are currently feeling. And maybe you can relate to that. Maybe people in your church have actually shared that with you. And then now what do you do with that? Here's a question for you. Do you consider yourself to be an emotional or rational person? If you answered emotional, ask yourself, has there been times when you just wished that you weren't so emotional? I have family members, I have people within our church. You're like, man, where's that emotion coming from? And then there's others that are just totally rational, and they're more analytical in their processing. Friends, emotions can be messy, but emotions are a part of our identity. Let me ask you another question. Are you a happy person or are you an angry person? You'll be surprised how people will define you based on your emotion that you project to the world. So when you're emotionally intelligent, you can easily identify your emotional triggers and better align with your values with actions. And quite frankly, actions and attitudes and behaviors. But more importantly, you can identify other people's emotional triggers and their values, and it improves your workplace relationships and ultimately how you perform in your role or your job. So think about this. In an organization, when people feel criticized, not appreciated, or recognized or cared for, they tend to make negative decisions that will lead to negative behaviors and, in the end, negative performance. Think about that. I started out my career in law enforcement, and man, there was not a lot of positive things that your supervisors would say to you. Then I got into a school as a liaison officer, and oh boy, the teachers just loved me, and they would just say things about my job performance or my attitude, and it really spurred me on to do a better job in that role. And then when I got called into ministry, I took that attitude into our first church plant. There is a direct link between the decisions, our behaviors, and our performances, and we have a choice. Emotions can either get in our way or they can get us on our way. So in an organization, a church, a police department, the way people feel about issues is important and plays a great role. When people feel good and valued, respected, considered, treated well, esteemed, they tend to make positive decisions. And then that impacts their behaviors in a positive way that leads into a positive performance, as you can imagine. So the path with emotional intelligence begins with understanding your emotions and then gaining this awareness how to manage them. And I think that is the key. All emotions are in essence impulses to act, and instant plans for handling life is instilled into us. So the very root word of emotion is motir, the Latin verb to move, thus the prefix e to indicate move away, suggesting that we have a tendency to act is implicit in every emotion. Just think about that, reflect that a little bit, related to sadness, happy, anger, frustration, embarrassment. Now let's move on. So there's this emotional intelligence grid, and we look at self-awareness, and then your social skills, empathy, motivation, and self-regulation. The emotional wheel, an American psychologist named Dr. Robert Plutchik proposed that there are 8 primary emotions that are foundational in all human beings. So from sadness to joy to acceptance, disgust, fear, anger, surprise, and anticipation. But the combination of all our emotions comes to the overwhelming, the overwhelming amount of emotions that we have, like 34,000 distinct emotions. And we can learn how to identify the primary emotions and act accordingly. So the self is composed of different parts, including your abilities, your thoughts, your goals, your experiences. A couple psychologists basically argue that self-awareness is a vital component of self-control. And people who lack self-awareness have a higher likelihood of looking outside themselves for reason to justify their behavior. They tend to blame other people. It's not my fault. You triggered that response in me, which just isn't true. And they are often unable to rein in their emotions, and they prefer to place blame on someone else. So here's a question for you. Do you know anyone like that? Are you like that? Of all the moods that people want to escape, rage seems to be the most stubborn. In fact, anger is the mood people are most and worst at controlling. And I can identify with that. I've had a long journey of anger. I've studied anger. We know what Scripture says about anger. Don't let anger cause you to sin. And so I get that. But venting anger is actually one of the worst things that you can do to cool down. Outbursts of rage typically pumps up your emotional brain's arousal, leaving people feeling actually more angry, not less. That I was very convicted when I was studying this. Like, I'm a venter. I process and I get it out quickly, and then I'm still agitated. I'm like, okay, I need to do some things to control myself with that. Benjamin Franklin put it this way: anger is never without reason, but seldom a good one. I just love that quote. And Proverbs 16:32 says, whoever is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who takes a city. Very convicted by that passage. Well, let's look at self-awareness specifically for you. Recognizing the feeling as it surfaces, as it happened. It's the cornerstone of emotional intelligence. Knowing one's emotion, knowing your emotion and being aware of that. And an inability to notice our true feelings leaves us at the mercy of our emotions. So years ago, I heard about the different aspects of anger. And my wife and I were able to navigate through, okay, I'm frustrated, but it comes out as anger, or I'm embarrassed and it comes out as anger. So to be able to identify the root cause of your emotion is going to pay dividends as you're socially engaging with other people. People with greater certainty about their feelings are better pilots of their lives. They just know how to control things in their life. They have a sure sense of how they really feel about a person's decision, such as who to marry or what job to take or what ministry to transition into. So Goldman's four quadrants of emotional intelligence dissect it like this. So self-awareness, which involves recognize your emotions and then your impact, and then knowing your strengths and your limitations and processing a strong sense of self-confidence. A couple of summers ago in our subdivision, all of a sudden, this developer cut down all these beautiful evergreen trees. And I was kind of irritated by that because we kind of live on the edge out in the country, and heard that they were going to build this apartment complex. So I come into the house, my kids are there, adult kids and grandkids, and they leave. And my wife says, yeah, our daughters want to know what you were mad about. And I said, mad? I'm not mad. And I had to reflect on what I was exhibiting because I was frustrated about this development. And then I had to go back to them and say, hey, did you think I was mad at you? And they go, well, your face, your body language, everything said that you were upset. And I'm like, boy, that is good feedback for me. So these four quadrants, the next one is self-management. It comes from utilizing your self-awareness to regulate and manage your emotions, to be able to process through in the moment what you're dealing with. And it's your ability to use awareness in your emotions to stay flexible and positively direct your behavior. I'm grateful that the older I get, the more flexibility I have. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to get upset about traffic or being a few minutes late. I can just release that and let that go, which ties into motivating yourself. It's delaying gratification and stifling impulses to act, impulses to say things that we should not say. And people who have this skill tend to be more highly productive and effective in whatever they tackle and whatever they do. I remember we were missionaries in Panama and we planted this international church, and this lady came up to me and she said, I don't have a filter. I just say whatever comes out of my mouth. And I thought, what? That's self-awareness. Like, you do filter what you say. You probably don't use profanity words in front of your children, or, if you're dealing in a corporate sense, you're going to modulate and adjust the things that you say. And so you're being self-aware in that regard. And that ties into social awareness. It's how you relate and handle relationships and your ability to feel empathy, not sympathy, but empathy. Like seeing the needs of other people, seeing how they are reacting. It's reading others. It's this idea that we're wearing masks and we see the emotions in the eyes of others. And it's an ability to accurately pick up the emotions in other people and understand what's really going on. So even during the pandemic, when we had to wear masks, we could still see people. Hey, are they frustrated? Do they have joy? Are they sad? And you can actually ask people, hey, you doing okay? I sense something. The next is recognizing emotions in others. It's this empathy, and it builds on emotional intelligence and is a fundamental people skill. In relationship management, we all need to get better at this. It refers to your skill and proficiency at encouraging desirable responses through inspirational leadership, being a catalyst for change, wielding influence, and negotiating, and actually resolving conflicts. It's your ability to use awareness of your emotions and of others' emotions to manage interactions successfully. It's amazing what you can do by just lowering the pace of your speech, talking a little softer, and getting people's attention. No one wants to be yelled at. No one wants to be screamed at. No one wants to be bawled out for a poor job performance or whatever that may be. And then managing the emotions, handling those feelings so it's appropriate. It's not inappropriate, and it increases your self-awareness. People that are poor in this ability are constantly battling these feelings of distress. You probably work with them. They complain a lot. They're always negative in some regards. Those that can excel in this, they bounce back much quicker from life setbacks. So when we're in a bad mood, we don't contemplate it and obsess about it. We get over it quicker or sooner, and our mindfulness helps us to manage those emotions. I have got some grandchildren that are my wife watches, and when they're upset, my daughter makes them count to 10, and they say a little jingle and they sing a song, and it calms them down. We tend to not do that in adulthood, but we should. We should reflect and take a pause. Why am I feeling this way? I don't want to say something that I'm going to regret. Well, then we communicate in a lot of different ways. A couple that we'll just highlight today is facial expressions. It's a dynamic canvas that displays our emotional states. You know those people that don't show any emotion? Sometimes they're hard to read. Sometimes I get misperceived as, hey, what are you upset about? Because I'm not exuding joy. I'm not expressing that, but I'm just thinking, and I have no facial expression in that regard. But you read people's face all the time, and so do I. Then it's the bodily expressions. It's universal. It's across all the nationalities, all the race. It's distinct, certainly in different cultures, but it's really reliable information that we can look at. We had a deaf church planter that I was working with in Wisconsin. And I said, hey, when I see deaf people communicating and signing, sometimes like at an airport or a restaurant, I'll see real dramatic movements. Can I interpret that like they're having an argument or it's intense? He goes, absolutely. So even the deaf, when they're signing, there's body language that it's expressing communication. The next one is certainly speech. And so there's thousands of different ways that we speak, right? So fear could be expressed as I'm afraid. Other cases, it could be figurative expression like, metaphors and analogies. I'm trembling with fear, or I feel trapped. I'm hitting rock bottom. Those are the three areas that express emotion. It's facial, bodily, and verbal. And the integration of these three help us really capture the full essence of an emotion. So values play a part in this too. What do you value? Knowing your values help you better understand the roles that play in interactions and conflict, how your values relate to other people, and you can identify your top values. And I would encourage you to do that. Hey, what do you value? And because if there's a value related to you and someone tramples on that value, that could cause you to be frustrated and then cause anger. And then there's conflict in the workplace or the church. So then you look at developing your self-awareness. Okay, so this is the good news. You can actually go from being very self-aware to growing in emotional intelligence. And this is also from Brandon Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence. So, number one, observe yourself. Do you catch yourself talking too much? Keep a journal. There's introverts and extroverts. I'm an extrovert. My wife's an introvert. I'm the talker, the communicator in our communication. And so when I'm doing coaching with young pastors or clients, when I sense that they're a talker, I actually ask them, hey, do you know that you talk a lot? And then I say, do you know the acronym WAIT? Why am I talking? It's the reminder of self-regulating, being socially aware, culturally aware, quite frankly. So observe yourself. Second is reflect. Have introspection. If you're able to identify the root cause for all your thoughts and emotions, you are on your way to becoming self-aware. And then ask for feedback. Ask for feedback. Those people that fully trust you and you trust them, that have your best interests, ask them about your blind spots. I've done this a lot. I will send out texts and some of the things that I do to get people to help me understand my values. What do I need to know about myself and blind spots? And then shift your mindset. Scientists say that every time you hold back your anger and instead of lashing out and opt out for a more peaceful option, you are training your brain to help you become more of a calmer person. The next one is forgive yourself. There have been times that I've said things that I've regretted. And so I'll go back to that person. I'm really sorry I said that. And then I learn, and then I don't hang on to that. I give it to the Lord. I know that He's forgiven me. And then you can start anew. I think the next one is you can pray about it. Lord, help me to be mindful. Help me to be mindful. So then you have self regulation. I like this. There's two areas of self regulation, it's behavioral and emotional. Romans 12:2 says this: do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what the will of God is, what is good and acceptable and perfect. So don't be the way of the world. Be transformed by the renewal of your mind. Learn some of these skills. And then in Galatians 5:22, it says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness. Key phrase for me is self-control. Against these things there's no law. So you have behavioral self-regulation, emotional regulation. Then you go into empathy. Can you get better at empathy? Yes, you can. You can listen more and talk less. You can allow yourself to be vulnerable. You can put yourself in their positions and their shoes, and you can ask better questions. So important. So here are the 6 behavioral characteristics of emotionally intelligent leaders. Demonstrate awareness of their moods and their emotions. Makes others feel appreciated. Do you do that? And then is open and honest about mistakes. Do you admit when you're wrong? Can you say, hey, I just really messed up, and apologize for that and learn from that mistake? They make ethical decisions. They also manage their emotions effectively in difficult situations, and they recognize others' hard work and achievement. Again, people need encouragement. They need to be spurred on, and you can draw them out and you can get better at this. So let me end with this. Ephesians 4:6-7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Friends, it's been a pleasure to be with you today. God bless. Take care.